Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at Etrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Demco 12-volt outlet kit on a 2021 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. And this is a great option to add an extra outlet into your Jeep that's directly tied to your battery so you always have power. In more cases than not, we're installing these for a portable braking system because these run off of 12-volt power that have a cigarette style outlet that plugs in. Now, the issue is a lot of your factory outlets really aren't this style anymore. Most of them have gone to a USB or that doesn't have 12-volt power when the car is off. And then many times the flat tow mode, you will have the key off, so that doesn't have power. And adding the Demco 12-volt kit will always have the power for the braking system to work properly. This kit allows you to mount the 12-volt outlet really anywhere inside of the vehicle, and it does come with a long length of wire to be able to run to your battery. So keep that in mind that you will be running this through a grommet into the engine bay to get power from the battery. But in our case, this bracket works out really well in our footwell. It doesn't take up a ton of space, but still allows us to get our portable braking system plugged in nice and easy. I like the fact that you can mount it anywhere, especially in a footwell where really all we're going to be using it for is the braking system. This cable is not particularly long, but this in that spot is going to be perfect for us to get power to our braking system. With that plugged in, we can now power up our braking system and we'll be ready to hit the road. Now, I've done tons of 12-volt outlet kits for flat-towed vehicles, and this is the first time I've actually done the Demco one in place of other brands, and I do like this one, I think, the best, and there's for a few reasons. Some of the other kits, the wiring is not very long. You'll get about 5 foot, and that's really a stretch when you go from the inside through your grommet all the way to the battery. More times than not, you're going to be extending the length of that, and also they give you a spade connector on the end, which they want you to put into a fuse. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'd rather go directly to the battery, and the Demco kit does just that. It gives you plenty of wire to be able to run that over nice and clean. There's also an inline fuse, which is an ATC style rather than the glass fuse that the other ones come with. I think that's a better option overall. It also comes with the ring terminals to be able to attach to the positive and negative. And just as simple as I explained it, it's about that easy to get installed. And speaking of that, I'm going to walk you through how to get it installed. So let's take a look at that. We're first going to get our receptacle mounted up underneath in the footwell. And you want to have it in a spot that's going to be accessible to be able to plug in your braking system, but also not in the way. So just kind of keep that in mind, pretend you're sitting in the vehicle and make sure that you can reach it, but also you're not going to be hitting it with your feet. This will just self-tap in, so pretty easy there. So grab your self-tapping screws, your spade connectors, and we'll get this all mounted up before running our electrical to it. Our bracket I mounted right here on the plastic, and this allows me to have it out of the way, but also it's going to be a great spot for our braking system to plug in. Now at this point with the bracket mounted up, we don't want to put our plug in because we're going to take our duplex wire, and this is going to run from the engine bay and run through the grommet, and then we can attach it here. It's a lot easier than having this in place trying to make that connection. So I'll get my duplex ran and then I'll show you how I did it. And we do have enough length for this to have excess on the battery side as well as in the inside, but make sure you're not leaving yourself shortchanged. And we'll be running one of these to the fuse holder, but make sure that you have enough to go to the negative. And to route this clean on the Wrangler, super easy. This channeling here right along the threshold behind the engine cover is a great spot to tuck this in. You won't even have to zip tie it up because that'll hold it in place before we feed it in to the grommet. The grommet is going to be located right by the brake master cylinder, and it's a plastic cap. It looks exactly like this. Sometimes it's hard to twist out. If you go from the inside and push it out, it's a little bit easier. And as I mentioned, I drilled a hole to get this passed through, but I also have my breakaway switch for my Blue Ox Patriot running through at the same time. So that way, when we put this back in place, it'll be nice and clean. So just make sure it's large enough. Don't go too big because eventually we do want to go back and get some RTV silicone on here to keep it watertight. If you make the hole too big, it can get a little bit tricky to get that filled. So with our excess, I'll just pull this through and then we'll head inside where we can start making our connections. And once routed through, just make sure you pass that through the bracket, and now we can start making the connections to the plug. So first thing, cut back the insulation to separate the wires. And if you have excess wire here, you're totally fine to leave that, and just in the engine or in the firewall area, you can just roll that up and zip tie it. It's better to have a little bit of excess than cutting yourself short. And once peeled back enough to where we can split these a little bit, we'll take our stripper and peel these back. On each end, twist up your wires. This will help make a little better connection in our spade connectors. We'll then slip these over and crimp them down. And with any crimp that you make, you always want to make sure that it's going to stay in place. So I always try to give it just a quick tug just to make sure that'll hold in. We'll get our other side attached as well. The plug has a terminal that's going to be in the center and then one on the outside. So with your black spade terminal, we'll put that in place in the center. And then our white is going to go to the outside. The plug has slots on one side that you'll see, and then snaps, and the slot will align in the bracket. There's going to be one on the top or bottom, so you can choose which way you want it. I would kind of just play around with the cap, make sure you have, clearance for that to open. I'm going to put mine like this so it's not going to be in the way. So we'll just feed back our excess wire. As we feed this in, it should snap into place. And then we'll just cap this up. So with this connection made, we'll head back to the battery side. We'll make the rest of the connections. Our fuse holder is going to protect any surges from occurring. This is going to be just kind of a fail-safe. That way we're not damaging our plug if we get a short. And we're going to want to attach this to the battery first. That way we can see exactly where we need to trim back on our duplex wire to get it attached. So this is just a loop. You can cut wherever, but I'm going to leave myself a little extra on one side so I can route this clean to my battery. So we'll cut this back, strip back one of the ends. Grab one of the included ring terminals. And then we can crimp that down. And there's a few spots that you can attach to on the battery. I'm going to be using this spot. It's going to be a 10 millimeter socket to loosen this up. And I'll put my ring terminal on. Now make sure you don't have your fuse in the fuse holder. We don't want any power going through as we make any attachments. And then this will connect to our white wire from our duplex. So seeing where our wire runs, I can actually cut this back a little bit, but I'm going to strip back our sheathing to here. And many times if you put a small slit, you can peel this to where it rips. If it's giving you a little trouble, you can run a razor blade along here. Just make sure you're not cutting into the wire as you do that. But once you start peeling, it should come off fairly easy and you'll be able to split it. We'll strip back the other end of our fuse holder, and this will go to our black wire. Now, something that's included in the kit to make that attachment is this yellow butt connector. Something that I might recommend picking up is going to be a heat shrink butt connector. Just because this is in the engine bay, once you crimp this down, it acts like a normal butt connector, but when you heat it up, it's going to shrink down the ends, and that's going to prevent any water from getting in there and breaking down the connections long term. So I'll be using this. You can pick those up here at Etrailer, and it's just a little added protection. So I'll cut back my black wire and get that stripped, and then we can connect it. And if you're using the heat shrink butt connector, a heat gun does a good job of shrinking this down. The white wire I just continued on, put our ring terminal and attach that to the negative on the battery. At this point, all that's left to do is put our fuse in the fuse holder. We can cap that up, and then we want to test to make sure that the outlet is working. To test ours, I have my Patriot in place. We'll get this plugged in. We'll then just hit our power button, and that's a good sign that we have 12-volt power. So at this point, you can zip tie up the excess duplex wire you had and clean up any of the wires in the engine bay. But that will do it for our Demco 12-volt outlet kit on a 2021 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.